Good evening and welcome to the second Guitar for Vets Workbench. I'm your host, Daniel B. Guitar for Vets Cavart's virtual chapter, guitar instructor, also host and team member of the Guitar for Vets Guitar Shop. Man, I'm running out of breath. Every good guitar store has a technical or repair section. They provide services for changing strings and cleaning, some repairs, as well as performing setup and modifications on your guitar or guitars in some of our cases, especially Kurt. These services are not free. There are guitar maintenance skills that you can learn to perform on your guitar and save some money and a trip to your local guitar shop. For some folk, there is not a guitar shop that is conveniently nearby your location, so learning guitar maintenance skills are important to keeping your guitar in top condition. The Guitar for Vets Workbench and crew are here to help with learning some of those skills. At the end of tonight's event, we'll unmute everybody and we'll open it up for questions and comments and have a little panel discussion for sure. Please bear in mind that everything that is talked about or demonstrated by the Workbench Crew is based on the Workbench Crew experience, opinions, skills, and knowledge. Every effort is taken to verify any information put forth. Any references to brands are for demonstration purposes only. The G4V Workbench, it has no affiliation with any of the brands that are mentioned. So now it is my pleasure to introduce the Workbench Crew. You all know him from the Guitar for Vets Guitar Shop, guitar guru, and guitar builder, John DeMarco. Raise your hand, John.
I'm here.
And guitar builder, Telecaster builder extraordinaire, Matt Lorance. And from now on, will be known as the Dr. Frankenstein of the Workbench Crew, Leif Peterson. So now, John, over to you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Tonight, we're going to talk about setups, and we're not going to actually do a complete setup, but we're going to walk through the steps, and we'll talk about it from an acoustic and an electric standpoint. So just to kind of get going, you remember last time when we got together, we talked about just general, cleanup and, maintenance and string changing, that kind of thing. Typically, a setup would happen, and then you would change your strings at the end of that. So we won't redo that part of it. But what we want to talk about is what actually happens in a setup. Well, first off, you as the player have to make some decisions. Do you want to bring your guitar in for a little bit of a setup, or do you want to work on it yourself? And you may have a few tools or ideas after tonight to decide if you want to attempt to do it or if you want to bring it into somebody at the shop. So with that, I'll just kind of dive right in. So one of the first things I do when I look at a guitar to decide if I'm going to do a setup on it is you use your eyeballs. And so the first thing I do is I look down the neck and I look to see if there's any rocking, I'm going to call it twisting of the neck. Okay. If that happens, I'm going to suggest that either you get a new guitar, or if it's a really good guitar, then go to a professional, because that twist is very difficult to deal with. And it's frankly, on a lot of low-end guitars, it's not even worth dealing with. So again, twist is a bad thing, but what's the most important is how does that guitar feel when you're playing it? And that's something you definitely have an idea for, right? Are you having to push the strings too hard because the action is too high? Are there buzzing frets? And we'll go through a few of these things here now in the next few minutes. So first, let me just show you a slide or two. Well, I know it's here. There we go. All right. So the first thing on a setup is really looking at the neck alignment. Okay, and that's illustration over on the right there. That's my attempt to show you about.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
We're seeing your lovely countenance. We're not seeing a slide.
You don't see me up in the right-hand corner?
We see you. Are we supposed to be looking at something else?
Yeah, you're supposed to be looking at me inside of a slide.
Like you need to share your screen or something.
Yeah, we're just seeing the workbench behind you.
Huh. All right, sorry about that. Let's
No
see what we
problem.
can do.
We're better at fixing guitars than we are administering Zoom.
Yeah. What happens when I change? You see my whole face now, etc. Do you see the top of the guitar?
No, nothing's changed. We're just seeing you in your workshop.
Interesting. Okay, let me look and see if there's something I need to do.
If it's a visual, you can share screen and show us.
Here we go. I think I found it. Now you see the top of the guitar?
We do.
All right. Sorry
Oh,
about that, gents.
we're looking at the sound hole.
Yep, yep, perfect. All right. All right, now you should see me inset. There you go.
Yes,
All
nailed it.
right. So that on the right is that twisted neck, and let's see if I can shrink myself down just a tiny bit here. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so that twist is that's a deadly thing on a lot of used guitars. The other thing from an action and playing the guitar and enjoying playing it, there's this, you got to use the truss rod, and adjusting the truss rod is one of the first things that I look at on an acoustic or an electric. And so there's basically, 3 or 4 possibilities with the truss rod. And if you look at the illustration on the left, you can see where we've got several different choices, right? We've got one that is, with a lot of front bowl. We've got one with a lot of back bowl. We've got kind of a straight neck, which I think a lot of electrics do real well with that. And then we have what happens on a lot of acoustic guitars is you need just a little bit of relief on sort of the middle of the fretboard, so you don't get any buzzing. And speaking of buzzing, let's just I gotta find my share. Here we go. And we've got to also get musicians on. There we go. Now we do some share. And here's what I mean by fret buzzing. My main concern is as you go up the scale,
John, can you move your cursor? There you go.
So hopefully you could hear that. That's a unfortunate situation with factory guitars. They don't always come, right away set up correctly. And sometimes if it's just a couple of frets that are buzzing, a little adjustment on the neck will give you enough room where it doesn't buzz anymore. So let's kind of dive into that a little further and go right to, now I have to change my view once more. Here we go. And I'll get a light in here so you can see. So the first thing is a truss rod. Truss rod can be one of several kinds. Now this happens to be what's called a two-way truss rod. And it's got the 2 rods, and you have to know what kind of a truss rod you have, and it's usually good to look at the specs for your guitar to see what was installed. This is a 2-way truss rod, and that means that when I turn this nut right here, inside the guitar, I can make the neck go either direction, right? I can do a back bow, I can do a front bow. So most quality guitars, and even actually most student guitars now, have what's called a two-way truss rod. The alternative to that is what's called a one-way truss rod, and it might look like this. And by the way, we've got some slides later on. What you see here might look different. It might be a different size Allen key that needs to be used. It's very important that if you're going to do some adjustments that you have the right tool to make the adjustment. If you strip this out, you got a whole world of problems coming up when it's time to adjust your truss rod. In this case, this is a one-way, so it means that when I tighten it, I'll get some back bow, and when I loosen it, all it's really going to happen is the wood is going to go back to its natural position. So it works great if what you're trying to do is get a little bit of back bow or take a little bit of front bow out. It's not so good if you're trying to give it some relief, although sometimes just having heavier strings on the guitar will give you a little relief, which is another little tip to think about. Well, anyways, that truss rod is in one of two places. It's either, on an acoustic guitar, it's either inside the sound hole, and in the top picture you can see it kind of below my finger here, and it's kind of poking out of that little block of wood right there. Or the alternative to that is on some guitars, like I've got a Taylor that has actually got a truss rod cover here, like a Les Paul has, electric guitar, and if you take that cover off, you now have access to that truss rod.
Yep, Brian's showing you on the Epiphone.
Okay, good. So I should also mention about Epiphones. Some Epiphones have got a little truss rod cover up on the top, but there's nothing underneath it. And in fact, we had some student guitars that came in. The truss rod was actually down here in the hole, through the sound hole. It wasn't up here on the top, even though it had a cover. So, what basically happens, and a lot of guitars come with that, is you need some sort of a tool. In this case, it's an Allen key type of tool, and it goes into that truss rod slot, and you're probably seeing the top of my head. And if you tighten it, it's going to give you a back bow. If you loosen it, it's going to give you some back bow. If you tighten it, give you some front bow if you loosen it. So it's lefty, righty, think of it lefty, loosey, righty, tighty kind of a thing. I'm not going to do it to this guitar because it's in pretty good shape, so I'm not going to change it. The other question that comes up quite often is, hey, should I be doing that with the strings on or off? And I think you definitely should do it with your strings on, even though you're going to be changing them later, because I think you want the pressure of the strings on the neck. There's a tremendous amount of pressure from the strings. If you unstring it and then try to adjust your truss rod, it will adjust very easily. Unfortunately, you're not going to have the shape of the neck the way you will have it once you have all that weight back on there from the strings. The other thing is, try not to turn more than about 1/8 to 1/4 turn at a time. And you will hear some cracking noises sometimes. It's really not cracking, it's the truss rod putting pressure. You'd have to twist it awfully hard to break anything on the guitar. Can you break the neck? I've never seen it, probably can. What you definitely can do is mess up the truss rod by turning it too quickly and too far. So typically, again, 1/8 to 1/4 turn at a time, and then take a look and see what your setup is looking like and what it's doing. So any thoughts or questions on that before I move on to the next situation?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, so let me change the views here one more time. All right. So the other thing you want to know about your guitar is,
Hey, John, can
yeah.
you also show, like, pick it up and look? Because most people will be able to notice whether it has changed, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You'll be able to look at both the first fret and the 12th fret to see if it's changed. And we're going to talk about measuring that in a minute too, so that you really know if it's changed or not.
And
So-
John, if you adjust your guitar a quarter or an eighth, and you see that it needs more, do you let it rest and set, or you just keep doing another turn on it?
You know, I have to tell you, I used to be really cautious and wait an hour or two. Lately, I have been doing, you know, as much as a half turn in increments to see how it's going. So
Gotcha.
I think you can take a lot more. It can take a lot more pressure than we first thought. But you will hear little clicks and, you know, strange little noises. So if it scares you, there's nothing wrong with holding back and waiting for a few minutes. So the other thing from a setup perspective is understanding if your neck is straight or has any relief. And you would actually do this before you adjust your truss rod. And one way of doing that is to have a straight edge. And with this straight edge, and you're not seeing it at the angle I am because I'm lower than you are, but you know, it's hitting all the frets nice and straight. There's really no space, you know, showing, no light showing. So it's, you know, the frets are pretty straight, but it isn't just the frets, and so that's where this special little thing comes in handy sometimes. Is if it looks like your frets are under control, you also can use this to take a look at, is your neck straight? And again, it's one of those things where you put it perpendicular to the fretboard and it's resting on the fretboard, and then, well, I've got a little white wall behind me right now, so I can tell if there's any you know, air or space on the neck, and again, it's nice and tight. The tolerance is very, very close. So, you know, not only are the frets relatively flat to each other, and of course, that's, you know, all the way down the fretboard, right? And I can do it across the fretboard. But also, it's, you know, the neck is nice and straight. One thing that you might want to invest in, and this is really the only tool that let me get my other camera going here at a different angle. I might have you say go out and invest on. And again, you won't see quite the same angle because I can't get quite as low down as you need to see it. But there's a device called a fret rocker, and it's this device, and you'll see it's got several angles on it, and it actually has some measurements there, and we'll talk about that in a minute when it comes time to, you know, if you're going to do any kind of work to change the setup on your guitar. But what you have here is a sort of a triangular, I don't know what this is, it's not really a triangle, quadrangle. And the way you use it is essentially you're looking to see if each fret and the fret on either side of it are the same height. And so the way you can do that is place it here across 3 frets, and if it doesn't rock, well, then those 3 frets are the same height. Okay? And then when you get down here where perhaps the frets are closer together, well, then you pick one of those other angles to get it to rest on 3 frets. And then you look to see again, is there any rocking? or are those 3 frets? And of course you would do it across the entire fretboard, 3 at a time, right? And then that would tell you if your frets, and again, you would do it in more than one position on the fretboard, and that would also show you or help you to understand if you've got any frets that are higher or lower than others. The next thing that you might want to look at is actual height. Sorry, here we go. Actual height of the frets. And I'm going to show you a slide or two first. Oh, those are not the ones I wanted to show. Here we go. So that shows my fret rocker and another example of a measuring device. Again, you don't have to have it. The fret rocker, I think, is pretty good. But you know, in general, for your string height above the frets, it's a range, right? And the range for an acoustic guitar is somewhere on the 1st fret of the guitar. On the bass side, on the 6th string, it's somewhere between 2.25 millimeters and 2.75 millimeters. And we'll get to if you don't have a little device like I've got in a second, we'll show you another way that you can measure. The high E string should be roughly between 1.75 millimeters and 2.25 millimeters. So that's what the little markings that you see on the bottom of both of those devices on the right hand side is. It's a gauge that allows you to measure your fret height. And so if I go back to this, at the 12th fret, for instance, here, I can, and again, you're not seeing it quite the same angle I am, but I'm going to say that I'm at 2.5 millimeters at the 12th fret. And frankly, I would probably like to bring that down just a tiny bit for myself. But if you don't play up here, it's probably not as important as the measurement down here on the 1st fret. And so from the 1st fret standpoint, there's, if you don't have one of these little guys, right, to measure, there's a real simple thing you can do, and I've got a chart on this too, but you can use pocket change, okay? And essentially, you can use any device that you can slide under the strings. So if you've got feeler gauges, you could put more than one of those together and measure under the 1st and under the 12th fret to see if it's, you know, within tolerance. Or you can use, you know, a penny, a dime, or a nickel, as long as you know how thick they are. So I think Paul posted it before the meeting tonight. A nickel is where we say the highest tolerance for that 1st fret is. So if a nickel easily slides underneath that low E string, then the string is too high. Okay? I give you an idea about this one. The penny doesn't slide underneath there. It isn't until I get to the dime that I can move it, so it's still lower than the dime, but that tells me that the tolerance at the 1st fret is pretty good. And let me switch to another little chart real quick for you. And so here's a chart, and we'll post all this stuff. But you can use just about anything. In fact, one of your best friends might be calipers if you want to use things. But up there, you'll see that I've got the measurements, and realize the coinage is, is very, very tight tolerances. So, a 1 cent penny, American 1 cent, is 1.52 millimeters. A nickel is 1.95 millimeters. Dime is 1.35. 25 cents is 1.75, and 50 cents is 2.15 millimeters. On the lower right, I happen to have a big jar of change from Europe from when I was working and I was traveling to Europe on a regular basis. So I gave you the measurements of some European coins as well. But if you think about it, if you've got a calipers, you can use washers, you can use guitar picks. There's a million things you can use and measure to decide if the tolerance is roughly within specifications. All right, so I think we're going to turn it over to the rest of the team. I'll get this off the screen, and we're going to just talk in generalities about high and low frets, and what do you do when you have low and high frets? And Leif, maybe you want to jump in on some of this, and Matt.
Sure, yeah, I'll hop in. I've also, let me switch cameras here. I don't know if you can hear. Can you hear the fret rocker? It's clicking, but the example I have here, these frets are toast. You can kind of see them scalloped there from use. This is a perfect example of a fret work that would just be thrown away. This is now an experimental, but if you did need to resurface this, these are protective. Did anybody hop in and comment as well?
Yeah, I couldn't hear the click, but I think you were definitely demonstrating the idea that a fret can be too high or too low.
And you can like I do have a tool here. If you really felt aggressive and it was not a guitar you were worried about destroying, this is a file essentially glued to a block of wood that will allow you to flatten. And that sounds horrible. Can you see that in the image there?
Yep. And then, there are other tools that you can get, like when you actually do a fret job. I'll show you a couple of examples. Here's a couple of actual fret files, and these are crowning files to round them over, but sometimes you can use these to bring a fret down just low enough and keep the crown on it, the roundness, so that you're able to get rid of that fret buzz. The example that we just showed you with the block of wood in the fret, that's not going to be quite as accurate, right? But and one of the things that I would say is either way, no matter what tool you use, I always put some marker on the top of the frets, so I can tell where I've brought them down with the file.
Also, were we talking about the fret ends at all?
Yeah,
and like
that's
sprouting out the thing. Okay,
you want to take that?
So
go for it.
On this example here that I have covered, there's a couple of different protectors, so you can protect your fretboard when you're doing your fret work. And as he said, that crowning file makes a much nice rounder end on that. We were talking about Epiphones earlier. I find sometimes they have a really sharp, you can see that example there. That's one that I would take the shoulders off of. It has not sprouted out. But then if you're lucky enough, you get something with binding on the edge, and then you've got a lot less chances of a fret sprout, if that makes sense at all. And then going back to this, comparing the two, if you can kind of see the difference in the edges, it almost looks like a bead on the end of that. The more rounded that is if you do a bend or something where the string goes over the edge, it doesn't catch. That can be a little irritating. John, does anybody think of anything else or any questions?
No, I think that's a good explanation. And the way you would go about this kind of stuff is iteratively, right? You wouldn't want to do a whole bunch at once. I mean, it goes back to what my dad used to always tease me about in wood shop. You know, if you cut something the first time and it's too short, when you cut it the second time, it's really too short. So, you know, when it comes to filing things, don't go too far too fast, right? You want to keep measuring. And the way what I would do with any of these things with the frets is I'd move the strings out of the way, and you know, you can just loosen everything up, and then you know, get the strings over to the side, use the file like we showed, and then restring it back up and then try it again, right? Rather than trying to get it perfect the first time, and try to work towards perfection. That would be my suggestion. Matt, any thoughts?
You want to go ahead and talk about actually checking the frets, look at least, do all that.
Getting a really strange echo from you, Matt. Were you talking about loose frets?
Everybody's echoing, I think.
There we go.
John's.
John, can you turn your musician's friend off?
Yep.
Everybody's been echoing, so I know it's hard for everybody to hear. So there it goes. Hey, so
Yep.
John, is this a good time to talk about checking for loose frets? Because obviously, if we're going to start at the very basic level, we need to check to make sure our frets are not loose before we.
Yeah,
even
absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
What I would just say here for guys is that this is not rocket science. Okay, the first thing you're gonna do is a visual or a tactile inspection. Just run your finger along your frets. It should be smooth. It should be flush. Nothing should be sticking out. Like Leif was saying, you shouldn't have a bunch of stuff sticking out on the edges. Look for anything. Just just actually look at the frets and say, okay, nothing's raised up from the fretboard. Actually look at it, make sure there's nothing up. You can also take just a metallic object as simple as a screwdriver, and you can just tap the frets. And as long as you're getting a solid, sharp sound, that fret is set in there. It's when you get a dull, hollow thunk on a fret that's going to tell you it's been raised or that it's got space under. So if I start at the bottom here and just come up, and I don't even have to take the strings off to do this, as long as I don't get a dull, and there's not going to be a dull, hollow thumb because this is a good fretboard, but that's just a simple way to check with just a little screwdriver. The other thing you can do that's just as simple, it's easier with the strings off. But again, when you're working on guitars, everybody likes to think guitars are really, really delicate. But I mean, I can just pull these strings off to the side like this and get them out of the way. They're not going to break. They're not going to snap off and hit you in the face. But you can just take a simple piece of paper and try to put it up under each fret. If the paper slides up under the fret, you've got an issue. You've got a fret that's not seated all the way. Now, this is where I would say if you identify a fret that is not seated properly or that is coming loose, that's where you need to decide if you want to watch 100 YouTube videos and decide if you want to get a brass hammer and try to tap them back into place, or if you just want to visit your local store and let your local luthier check it out. On a guitar like this that I bought or I built, I didn't buy it, I built it. If I had one of these frets I would probably try to fix it myself on a guitar sitting over here that I paid lots of money for. If one of my frets was up, I would probably take it to a luthier. Again, that's up to you, but that's easy way just to tell if your frets are loose. And that should be probably your first thing you should do is inspect them. It's the start at the simplest thing and work up. So start with your frets and make sure your frets aren't loose before you worry about the other stuff. So that's what I have on the frets that I wanted to talk about, John.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm going to jump into I'm going to talk about the bridge and the saddle on acoustics briefly, and then I think you guys have got to talk about truss rods and saddles for electrics, I think, right? So I'll let you guys get ready while I kind of look at the saddle. So as Matt was saying, you know, the strings can take a lot of exercise. You can stretch them pretty far, and so if you think about this logically, the way the strings operate on the guitar, from the bridge to the nut is the full length of the string, right? And at the 12th fret, that's basically mathematically the center of the string. And if you think about it a little further, the strings are anchored down here on the nut, and then on the saddle, that's the farthest point of a circle, right? If you could drag that string around in a circle completely, so you know you've heard the term of an arc, right? So it's actually an arc. It isn't that it's just a straight line. And so let's just pretend for a second. The question is, what do I do if the nut is still too low? If the nut is still too low, you may want to invest in a new nut. And we're going to talk about nuts and saddles and different kinds in a little while. It could be a couple other things. It could be that somebody slotted the string slots too deeply, and there are ways to mess around and fix that. One of them is to use a little super glue in the slot and some activator to harden it very quickly. And then if you need to, then you take a little bit of that away with a file, and you know you can use any kind of file that fits. There's special files for nuts that we can show you later on. Typically, I find that the nuts are pretty well set from the factories. I don't really run into problems with the nuts very often. Where I do run into an issue is at that 12th fret, where at the 12th fret, it's just way high. And I don't necessarily play a lot of chords that go all the way up the neck. And until Daniel B teaches me how to solo properly, which he's going to do, he promised me. I just hope he lives long enough to be able to do that for me. But because it's going to take a while, Daniel. That's all I'm saying. You're going to live a long life. It's just going to take me a while. But what really controls the height at the 12th fret is your saddle. And so typically, like in this situation, I told you I thought that my saddle might be a little high. And so what I would do on an acoustic at that point is I would determine how much lower I want this to be at the 12th fret. And then I would take double that, and that's what I would have to shave off the bottom of my saddle. Now, I wouldn't do it all at once, right? Because that might be too much. But what really controls the height at the 12th fret, and really just about anything after about the 4th or 5th fret, is how high this saddle is, along with the relief of your neck. And so what you might find yourself having to do is pry the saddle out of the guitar, and they're a little bit tighter on straight acoustics. And so you got to get the strings out of the way. I'd leave the strings on because you want to kind of keep going back and measuring at the 12th fret and the 1st fret to make sure you're not messing anything up. But you get that saddle out, and I'll show you just a real simple example about how you would go about And again, remember I told you I like to do things in small increments. This is just a piece of adhesive sandpaper, and it's actually just on a piece of plywood. I wouldn't use plywood. I would use a nice thick piece of glass that's nice and flat. I would use a nice thick piece of micarta or something like that. I actually, and I can't find it, but somewhere I have a marble tile. It's like a quarter. It must be closer to 3/8 of an inch thick. It's as flat as can be. And I put a little bit of adhesive sandpaper on there. And then with my saddle, I would put a stripe down the bottom of this with a Sharpie. And then I would very carefully start to sand the bottom on my sandpaper. And I want to keep it perfectly perpendicular to the sandpaper, right? I don't want to rock it to the left or the right. I want it perfectly straight up and down. And the way to make sure that you're doing that correctly is if you use a marker on this, you'll see where you still have to remove material and where you don't have to remove material, or if you're leaning too much one way or the other. The other thing is that there are plenty of jigs that you can buy. Truthfully, one of the things that I do, and it's a stronger clamp than this, but this is an idea. This is a plastic clamp. I basically use that to make sure that I'm keeping it nice and straight up and down. And yes, I do sand the bottom of my clamp a little bit, but the one I use normally is a metal one, so it doesn't much matter to me. And I just take a little bit off at a time. And then the other thing you can do is if you know how much you want to take off, you could actually strike a line here with a fine, a fine Sharpie or something like that to know when to stop. People have asked me, can I use a belt sander? And my answer is yes, but you can destroy a lot of nuts, and not only nuts, but saddles quickly. So that's on you if you do. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the other guys, and they'll talk about saddles, nuts, and probably, I think you've got, Matt, I think you've got some, you're going to show us a little show and tell on truss rods on electrics too, right?
Well, really quick, can I jump in while Matt's muted? One of the big reasons you might would adjust that later on in your guitar, I don't know if you guys, I've got it here instead of that. If you can see my Post-it notes shoved underneath the bridge, that belly bloat. I don't know if you guys can see how the belly of my guitar has actually started to pop outward.
Hey, show that
Which-
again. Show that again. I think
Can
we
you-
had a slide up.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you can see the Post-it notes in there, but it bowed up this summer in the heat and the humidity, sitting in a black case in the wrong spot, and I had to adjust the bridge because of it, just a bit.
All right.
All right. What I'm going to do here, just real quick, is cover a few things on electrics. Because electrics are a little different. I know not everybody has one. We're not going to take a lot of time on them, but we just want to show you. So what we were talking about earlier on some acoustic guitars, how they have a cover over the truss rod, like somebody had showed over on the while he was talking. A lot of electric guitars do actually have this cover over the truss rod. You'll have to take off the 3 screws to actually get to the truss rod adjustment. And you can see down this bottom picture, that's one that does not have a cover, but that's what it would look like. You would have the you just had the open there, or kind of like the guitar too that I've been holding up also. Then on the right hand side of this like you have what's normally found on a vintage or a vintage reissue Fender guitar. Specifically, a lot of the old Fender Telecasters and vintage reissue Telecasters, like the Baja Telecaster, have the truss rod adjustment down on this end by the pickup. Now, listen, I have never had one that is this high up that I could actually adjust it without taking off the strings and taking the neck off. So if you have an instrument like this, you have a little more challenge to adjust your truss rod, because normally you're gonna have to loosen the strings, take the neck off, do your adjustment, put the neck back on, tighten the strings back up, and see where you're at. So it's a lot more work on those vintage type instruments. And then finally, as far as electrics go, the newest and greatest thing on electric guitars is this wheel truss rod that they're starting to put in a lot of guitars now. You see, it's just a wheel, and you'll see there's a circle there, and you basically can just put up, even here again, a little screwdriver in there and turn it left or right. They're usually dual action, but there are some that are only single action, and that just makes it where it's even easier to adjust your truss rod. So those are just real quick some of the types of truss rods you'll see on electric guitars. And I'm going to move on. I want to talk about two types of bridges on electric guitars really fast, and then we'll move it on to somebody else here. But so this is a classic 6-position Fender type Stratocaster bridge. You see this on a lot of guitars. You even see this on a Telecaster. Each individual string has their own adjustment. If you can see the Allen wrenches that are on top here, that is how you move your strings up and down. There are no adjustments, no sanding. You just basically need your string gauge like he showed you, and an Allen wrench. You can move those strings up and down to put them where you want them. Normally you do that at the 12th fret, but you can move the strings just by adjusting those. Okay, the next bridge is the old three saddle Telecaster type bridge, and it is the same exact thing, except normally those adjustments to move it up and down are just going to be a common screwdriver. Like anything else with these bridges, though, guys and ladies, use the proper tool to adjust them. Don't use a screwdriver that's too big. Don't use a screwdriver that's too small. Use the right size Allen wrench so you don't strip them out. And later on, I'm going to come back to these slides again when we start to talk about intonation, because intonating an electric guitar is a lot easier than maybe intonating an acoustic guitar. But I'm going to stop staring my screen and let Leif take over. I think Leif's going to maybe tell you about Les Paul Bridge and maybe something else. And I know that our esteemed host, Dan Bigelow, is going to talk to us a little bit about a Floyd Rose. So I'm going to stop sharing and leave it over to you, Leif.
Yeah, I've got a couple other guitars I can pull up if you can see. Just different kinds of bridges. Because this one's much more, like the Epiphones, you'll see these like on a Les Paul, but where the strings go through, some people will route them over the top, but each string is adjustable, just like on that Fender that Matt just showed. Each string, you can adjust the annotations here. And I pull one more out before Daniel starts on that Floyd Rose.
And maybe talk about
Also
the bridge,
sometimes see
the bridge on that one too.
go back to the Epiphone.
Yeah, just show them how you would change the height of the
Yeah,
bridge
yeah.
there too. Because you talked about intonation, but I think
Yes,
show 'em
yes,
the
yes.
it's real simple on an electric to move it
Super
up and down.
simple. So it has thumb screws to adjust the heights of the strings. And then these are also adjustable in the back. What that adjusts is the break angle on your string. And again, endless debates on how much that break angle changes your sustain as well as the tension. Some people will actually string it underneath and come back over. And this way, in order to change make this less of a string, less of a harsh angle. But can you see those thumb wheels that go up and down here? I don't want to change it too much. I've got it set up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lee.
And then that's a two-piece, where sometimes I've got this on a couple of other ones, is a single piece that wraps comes in from here, wraps over the top, and then each individual saddle then adjusts front and back. Whereas, Paul, do you have one of the PRSs that has that static where it's just set? You can up and down?
Yes, upstairs I got that guitar.
No, no worries, no worries. But just this one has it just a little bit more adjustable, so they're not fixed. And then, Daniel, did you want to start talking about the Floyd Rose? I can pull mine. I'll pull mine mine up. I'll pull mine up here.
I'm kind of lazy. Actually, no. I don't have any room in here to really show everybody what it would be like to really have to deal with a floating bridge or a tremolo system. Leif's showing one right now. Can you spotlight Leif for a second?
Can you? Let's see. Can you hear me?
Go.
Yeah. There we go.
That's what one type of Floyd Rose looks like. There's a couple different types. That's a fulcrum type.
You has two point bridge. Yep. And we were going to talk about nuts later. That's a metal nut, metal locking nut. Yeah.
There are the locking nuts.
And then the spring mechanism for the floating bridge.
Mm-hmm. Nobody ever has those plates.
No, that's been gone for so long.
But anyway, I'm going to show you a brief video that actually will explain intonations so everybody knows what they are. Excuse me. And we'll see if I can get this thing to work. It's a quick video that's put out by ESP. I'll cut it short. It's about 9 minutes long, but I'm going to cut it short here.
Welcome to Tech Corner at ESP Guitars. My name is Todd Binder, VP of Product Development. Today I'm going to show you how to intonate an ESP guitar equipped with a Floyd Rose double locking bridge. Let me start by briefly explaining what intonation is. Intonation refers to the accuracy of the pitch when playing a musical instrument such as an electric guitar. For an electric guitar, we need to adjust the scale length, which is from the end of the string to the nut. By adjusting this length of the string, you're going to fine-tune the position to make sure that all the frets play in tune and in pitch with each other. If a guitar is not properly intonated, then when you play chords or notes across the neck, you may find that one area plays more in pitch or in tune than another area, and that's the purpose of intonating each string so that it plays in tune across the fingerboard. There are a few factors which affect intonation that I would like to point out before we start. First is the string gauge and tuning. If you change your tuning or string gauge, it will require you to adjust your intonation. Second is the string material, wound or unwound, nickel steel, stainless steel. Different types of string material will require different intonation adjustments. Third is the string action or string height. If your strings are higher off the frets, then they'll need more intonation adjustment or different intonation adjustment compared to low or medium height strings. There are also two more factors which could affect intonation that it's important to check before you start. The first is the condition of the frets, and the second is the condition of the strings. Both the frets and the strings you want to be in good condition. Use new strings if possible and make sure they're not worn out so that they will intonate better. Alright, so just to clarify what we do when we check for intonation, we need to check the open tuning for every string and compare that open note with the fretted note at the 12th fret. This is the halfway point between the end of the string here at the intonation point and the nut. So you want this 12th fret to match the perfect pitch of that note open and fretted at the 12th. Here are the tools you'll need. A good digital tuner, a 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench, a 3 millimeter Allen wrench, a small flathead screwdriver, and a string winder. Before you check your intonation, it's a good idea to make sure your string action and truss rod adjustments have been made before you start with your intonation. Okay, we've checked everything and we're ready to begin. Let's start by checking that we are tuned to the correct pitch. Okay, we're in tune. Now I'm going to start with the high E string. We want to check to see what the open note is compared to the fretted note at the 12th fret. So I can pluck the open note, check it on the tuner, make sure that I'm in tune. I also like to use the harmonic at the 12th fret, which gives me the same reading. Now that note, you want to compare to the fretted note. This is the fretted note. As you can see, the fretted note is flat. So in this case, when the fretted note is flat, I need to move the saddle towards the nut. If my fretted note was sharp, I would need to move the saddle away from the nut. I'm going to set my guitar down, and what I need to do is I'm going to loosen this screw that holds down the saddle. We'll use a 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench to loosen that screw. Before we do that, we need to make sure the nut clamps are loosened so that we can detune the strings. Now that that's loosened, what I'll do is I'll just manually detune the string so it relieves some tension from the bridge. We need to do that because if I loosen the saddle at the bridge, the saddle would just pop forward and it's got a little bit too much tension on it. So I loosen that. Now this string is detuned. I'm going to take my 2.5 millimeter wrench and insert it here. And before I loosen this, I want to take a look at where the saddle is in position on the bridge. I can see that I've got about a couple millimeters to move it forward. And what I want to do is I'll take my small screwdriver here and just hold it so that this saddle doesn't pop forward. Carefully loosen this. Now just taking my finger, I'm just going to push the saddle forward, maybe about a millimeter or so. And I can push back with my left hand if I've gone too far. I just want to go about a millimeter or so, and then I'm going to lock it down once I get there. Once again, you want to just take this screw to snug and just a hair past snug. You don't need to over tighten this, as you could run into stripping the threads. Okay, that's done. Now I'm going to tune this back up. We'll check the open note. You can use the open note like this, or you can use the 12th fret harmonic. Now we're going to compare that to the fretted note. We're in tune. So that string's been intonated properly. Let's move on to the next string, which is the B string. We'll check open, make sure that we get this in tune. Okay. Open, fretted. It's a hair flat, just a hair. So what we're going to do, just like we did on the E string, we'll detune this. Take our 2.5 millimeter wrench, loosen the saddle hold down screw, and I'll hold my small flathead screwdriver there, and I'll just position it forward just a half a millimeter. Tighten it back down and tune it back up. Here's the open note. Here's the fretted note. We're good. Okay, we've intonated the high E and the B strings.
That was great, and it reminds you why you maybe don't want a Floyd Rose.
Well, here's the one thing that this doesn't really give any idea to is that that's a locking, double locking tremolo system. If you don't have a locking tremolo, you've got to go through that process a couple times.
Yeah. So real quick, y'all, let me share my screen again because I just want to show everybody as soon as this pops up. So in the time that it took them to do that first string, we could have done a whole Telecaster or a whole Stratocaster.
Right.
Because on the Telecaster and Stratocaster, you just turn these screws here at the base of the bass plate, either left or right, to get that same note on the 12th fret. The difference is you can do each individual string on a Strat, which it shows. You see these strings down here at the end. You just turn those left or right to bring the bridge up or back, to stretch or to bring the string in. And then on the Telecaster, the thing about it is you're never going to get it perfect because each saddle is controlling 2 strings. So you just got to get it the best that you can. And I know that he showed a real fancy way to do it. I'm telling you, if you have an electric guitar, you can do this with a clip-on tuner, a capo on the 12th fret, a small screwdriver, and you can do it by yourself, sitting in your living room or sitting anywhere. It's literally, you put the capo on your 12th fret, take it, you screw whichever screw it is, left or right, with the clip-on tuner on the end. And like I said, you can do this whole guitar at the time it took him to do that one string on a Floyd. So that's easy peasy for the Strat and the Fender type guitars. So that's what I had for that. Thanks, guys.
Any thoughts on the Epiphone or the Les Paul bridges as far as checking intonations, Leif, or adjusting them?
You know, so very rarely have I found that there's an issue. But if you're gonna spend all that time to check your annotation, your little micro adjustments right there, it'll make all the difference, because when you do start playing up in the upper registers, it will sound better to you. It's worth taking the time. The Epiphones can do it. But going back to the acoustics, there's not a lot of changing anything.
I was just going to show you
once it's built. There you go.
You were asking about the Les Paul, so
yeah, it's
you're not going to be able to see it, but at this end are the tiny holes for the truss. Well, for the Allen wrench, it will just move these paddles forward or back based on what's needed. But what's so unique about this electric guitar is the switch plate that I've got on it.
Yes.
Can you see that?
Always choose more Paul. Always choose more Paul. Don't.
Yeah, so they were asking about intonation on an acoustic guitar, and really, I mean, I'll let the experts.
Yeah, let's see if I start talking. Can you see my assortment? Okay, so yeah, I was going to say, adjusting the intonation on an acoustic is really difficult. There's some very expensive equipment that is only a few of them in the country. I think it's called plecking, and maybe Matt knows more about it than I do. But if you had a really expensive guitar, you might want to go through it. I think it's maybe a $500, $800 kind of a thing. For the rest of us mere mortals, though, if you look at a saddle, and I don't know if I can get this where you can actually see it, but this saddle happens to be a bone saddle, and it's already got a little bit of adjustments. And what the adjustments are is they thin down from front to back to stretch the strings, like the B, for instance, right? That has to be in a slightly different position than the lower strings. And the only thing you can really do is do a little bit of filing to change the shape. And really the only amount of space you've got is however thick this is. So, you're not going to get it perfectly intonated, although I think it's close enough for most of us. The other thing I was just going to mention real briefly is around nuts. This happens to be, I think it's micarta. It's a micarta blank from Stu Mack, and you can make your own nuts. You can make your own saddles. Get blanks that are nothing more than a blank slate to work on. This happens to be a nut that I made for a guitar a long time ago, and then I did a better one, so I took this one off. And I would just say that the big thing about intonation on an acoustic is really probably more about, if you have the action too high, you're going to be stretching the strings too much when you get up to those high notes, and they're going to go sharp. Okay, so not only is it uncomfortable to play, but the notes aren't going to be in tune with the lower notes because you're stretching the string so much. So getting the action right as far as the height of the nut and the height of the bridge and the bridge saddle, and then any relief that you need in the neck, that's really the key to getting nice intonation on an acoustic.
The last thing I would say about intonation is most professionals say that you can't tell the difference. The average player can't tell the difference, and I believe that to a certain extent. Now, listen, what John said is true. I do have a Plek guitar. There's a place, Corsa Guitars in Orlando, Florida, that I got my guitar from. Plek all the guitars they send out, and it is an acoustic guitar, and it is almost perfectly intonated. I couldn't tell you the difference between that and my Epiphone or that and my Teton, to be honest with you. And like I said, if you take a guitar in there, it's a minimum of $265 just to put it in the Plek machine. So that's a lot of money if you can't really tell the difference between something that's slightly sharp or, slightly flat. But that's each individual has to determine that for themselves. So
The good thing about bad intonation, and I'm going to edit this out of the video tomorrow, so this won't stay forever. But the good thing about bad intonation is it's a reason to buy another guitar, as opposed to messing with it if it's on your acoustic guitar. So, do we have
Well,
anything else for the good of the order? It's already 9:43.
I'm editing the video and I'm going to leave that in.
well, and when you're starting off, you're only playing the first, like 5 to 10 frets, maybe up to the 12th fret anyway. So, you'll outgrow the guitar before you run out of space.
You can tell if you out of intonation when if you're playing like I do, or like I did, and you're bending a lot and stuff like that. They'll start going out. The saddles will move, and you can hear it. It's noticeable after a little while if it's getting bad. I've had one guitar. I got one out in the garage right now. It's an acoustic. It's a cheap acoustic, and it's got one string that the intonation's just awful on. It's a G string, and I'm all about ready to just make it firewood.
You guys, I want to be mindful of the time. Is there anything else that you guys had set to cover?
Nope, we got it all done.
That's it.
If not, I'm going to ask if it'd be all right if Daddy Ken Busby would unmute so we could talk about upcoming live events that are coming up. We've got our Boots, Strings, and Songs, kind of the song circle. I think this would be number 3.
Yes, this will be the third one and final one for this, for the quarter till we won't have one in December. So it'll be the first Thursday of November, and our what's it called?
Prompt.
The prompt is
I just
thankfulness.
prompted you with the word prompt.
Yes. Thankfulness. So
Yes.
whatever you're thankful for, or a turn on thankfulness. We've discussed that. So I
Yeah,
look forward to seeing anybody and everybody show up on the first Thursday with us, and send me your songs in email. I'll put the link in Cav Arts for my email and send it to me ahead of time. And I'm going to put it in a slideshow, and we'll go through it, and you'll be able to talk about it and explain your song and tell us the story behind it and whatnot and how you came up with it. And it's a real fun time. I've really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed hearing and watching everybody grow and learn with the songwriting as we move along. So.
Yep, and keep in mind, Ken is saying to send your song, but if you only have a verse or two or a partial
Yes.
song, that all works because it doesn't have to be a completely done song yet. And of course, I want to thank our captains on this adventure too for our workbench, John and Daniel B. and Leif and Matt. This is awesome that you guys are giving of your time so freely to help us fiddle with our guitars. We appreciate it.
Also, the next workbench is going to be the 20th, if it's done next month. right? At same time, 8:30.
Yeah, what are we, the second Thursday, something like that?
Third
20th.
Thursday. Third Thursday.
Third Thursday, and we're still talking about how we want to format that. We kind of want to figure out a way to get more of your input in the community input. We did string change and cleaning. We've done kind of setup and intonations. We talked about doing modding, but we kind of wanted to think about best way to go forward. There's a couple different ways we could do this. So keep your eye in the community. We'll be talking to you about these ideas going forward, and we sure appreciate you guys spending some of your Thursday night with us. Appreciate it.
One more,
Yep.
you missed the guitar shop. The next guitar shop coming up in November. It'll be the last one for this year, and that'll be on the 15th.
Do you have a topic?
Is it gift ideas for Christmas?
Yeah, gift ideas for Christmas.
Christmas gifts.
Yeah.
Christmas wish lists.
What's the new gear for this season? What are people
That
looking
kind of
for,
stuff,
right?
Yeah. Yep.
Are we drawing Secret Santa names, and do we have a funding limit?
Let's go for 1,000 and
I'm a size Taylor guitar.
A size Taylor.
It's made for Guitars for Vets. If y'all haven't seen that guitar, y'all definitely need to go out to the Guitars for Vet Facebook or the Taylor website and look at that guitar that they made in conjunction with Guitars for Vets.
It's even on Matt. It's even on Sweetwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can though, I think buy it from Taylor because I think we get the full 175. I'm not sure Sweetwater how they honor it if it's the full amount, but what they were telling us is if you buy it to try and do it, I think it's the same price, so you're not spending more.
Yeah.
But
$6.99 both places, so I'd buy it from Taylor and give the money to Guitars for Vets. So, everybody,
Awesome.
y'all have a great night. We appreciate y'all coming out. Thanks again.
Yep, have a
Hey,
great
if y'all want to talk, if y'all want to talk
We gotta
about,
do this one thing. Go ahead.
I called Gibson. I didn't get the mic adjustment tool for my Anthem pickup, and instead of sending me the tool, they sent me a whole nother Anthem pickup system. And I called them. I was like, "Hey, you didn't send me the tool. You sent me another pickup." And they're like, "Well, just keep it. We don't have the tools. You'll need to call LR Bags and get a tool sent." And I was like, "Okay." So I got this pickup system. If y'all want to talk about it, it's all in pieces, so we can talk, lay it all out, whatever. And me and Leif are close by, so I can take it and drop it off to him, and he can show it off or whatever. I don't mind. So
Real cool.
if y'all want to do something on pickups sometime, electric or acoustic pickups, and it's LR Bags Anthem, the full one.
So we're going to thank y'all for being a part of today's discussion. Guitar for Vets is a 501c3 non-for-profit dedicated to providing relief to struggling veterans through the healing power of music and community. Since 2007, Guitar for Vets has served at-risk United States veterans impacted by PTSD and other service-related trauma. Through our unique 10-week structured guitar instruction program, putting the healing power of music in the hands of our nation's heroes, helping to foster renewal, connection, and community. So on behalf of the G4V Workbench Crew and myself, be well and keep on strumming.